China's Belt and Road Initiative has received much attention from around the world since its first day of inception. While some see it as a boost to create connectivity and enhance economic growth, others see it as a China threat. The media have played a major role in how it is perceived. Today, we're happy to be joined by journalists from different countries to see how the media have reported differently on China's Belt and Road Initiative. Welcome to this special edition of The Point. I'm Lu Xin, and for this topic, we have Iftikhar Shirazi, Bureau Chief of Dom TV, joining us from Islamabad, Pakistan. In Beijing, Mr. Zeeshan, Shaikh, a correspondent for the Indian Express, and Qinduo, a senior journalist from China Radio International. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Now, for those of you who are not very familiar with the progress of the Belt and Road Initiative, which was pronounced 5 years ago, maybe I should go to Mr. Qinduo first to talk about what this initiative is really about, and over the past 5 years, what kind of progress has been made under this initiative?
Well, Belt and Road Initiative is mostly about economic and trade plan, so people call it initiative. It's open, it's inclusive, it's transparent. It welcomes, basically, originally, it's really about to connect China, Central Asia, and the European countries. And then you talk about maritime Silk Road is from China to Southeast Asia, South Asia, and East Africa. So you have like basically two roads to compose this Belt and Road Initiative. And then gradually it is open basically to the outside world. Any country that is ready to embark on the, come on board with the Belt and Road Initiative, you're welcome. So it's basically expanded to Latin America, African countries, mostly developing countries. So over the past 5 years, since 2013, there's a lot of successful investment and trade examples, like the port in Greece. Piraeus is very successful. Its growth has been strong and solid. That's a great contribution to Greece, the country. And then you have this railway line between Mombasa and the capital city of Kenya, Nairobi. So it cut by half the time for people to transport between two cities. And also the transportation of the container, the cost has been cut half.
So, however, in the media, it seems the picture is slightly different. At the beginning, nobody understood, nobody knew what this initiative was all about, and slowly people are getting a better idea. And yet, 5 years on, Mr. Shaikh, let me go to you first. 5 years on, for your readership, for instance, the readers of the Indian Express, do they think they have a reasonable level of understanding of this initiative? Now that you have been in China since 5 months' time, do you see what you have read about this initiative back when you were in India and what you see here? Is there a kind of a understanding shock to you?
Yeah, I mean, there is like a qualitative difference in the kind of articles that are written about BRI back home in India and here in China. I mean, because of the tense history that we share, the BRI project was not like looked at like in a positive light or with too much of sympathy back home in India. I mean, it was deemed to be a very Sino-centric project, and I mean, I hope it's not true, but a lot of kind of Indians felt that it was more a plan of China kind of dominating the world order. But over the past 5 years, I think a lot of things have changed. I mean, I wouldn't say things have changed very rapidly, but gradually things are changing. I mean, there has been so much of meetings that have taken place between the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese leadership. So there is a certain degree of positive approach that has come to the project in the Indian media. Not that much, but it is work in progress. And there are some positive articles that are being written about BRI in India back home as well.
Yeah, well, personally, would you shed light on some of the works that you have done or your publication has done, for instance, regarding the Belt and Road Initiative, maybe including criticism, but also including more rational look at this initiative as well? Can you recall some examples, maybe?
I think
or some stories of your interview.
Stories per se, I can't get into specifics of that, but in our newspaper, you know, we have like a column which kind of looks into international affairs, and there have been like increasingly for the past 5-6 months there have been opinion pieces that have been coming out which kind of say that, you know, it's high time that India and China kind of join hands, and India looks at BRI in a more positive light, and probably even the Chinese government kind of needs to take some kind of steps which would assuage India's feelings which are against this project. So in the last 6-7 months, a lot of positive articles have been coming out pertaining to this project in my newspaper.
Right. Well, that certainly sounds very positive to me. Let me go to your counterpart, Mr. Shirazi, joining us from Islamabad of Dawn TV. Mr. Shirazi, what does the picture look like? I can imagine it looks very much different from the scene in Indian press about this initiative. But exactly, what has been the kind of tone of reporting on the initiative since the past 5 years, and how much rationality there is, because after all this initiative is still in its infancy, or you know, it's toddler years, and there must be trials and failures and experiments, and people keep you know, finding the right path forward. So are these being discussed in the Pakistani media?
Yeah, when you talk about Belt and Road Initiative, which is very much known in Pakistan with CPEC, in fact name of CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and you know this is our national narrative that is a game changer for Pakistan, and there is some two major reasons why we are claiming that this is a game changer for Pakistan, because we have a 70 years long history of brotherly good relations with China, and it's a very much trusted relations. Every time when Pakistan find any kind of difficulty, it was China who helped Pakistan. And secondly, when the rest of the world was not willing to spend a single dollar in Pakistan, in fact in terms of investment, it was only China who bring $50 billion investment in Pakistan, which is unprecedented. It's a huge amount. We can't see this kind of investment in Pakistan in the past 70 years. So these are two major reasons why the people of Pakistan is very much positive. The Pakistani media is very much positive about CPEC, One Belt One Road initiative. And again, we are seeing some positive, in fact, infrastructure development in Pakistan. I belong to western part of Pakistan, and when we talk about the western route of CPEC, I mean, there is a lot of infrastructure development in my area from where I belong, and other parts of the country. Although there are some negative voices in Pakistan, some media, I mean, persons, which are very few, they have negative voices about the CPEC, One Belt One Road initiative. But in my opinion, they are very much influenced by the Western propaganda against the CPEC and One Belt One Road initiative. And secondly, because the agreement between China and Pakistan regarding CPEC is very much secret. Still, it's not open to everyone. So that gives the room to those guys to, I mean, criticize this project. Otherwise, overall, if you talk about Pakistani media majority, I mean, the majority of media is very much positive, and I mean, have a good voice regarding this initiative.
Well, just being the devil's advocate here, wouldn't it be a good thing if some criticism, some questions can be asked by the Pakistani media as well towards this initiative? Because although the intention is good, the will is there to upgrade the infrastructure, to develop the economy. However, business initiatives have to stand on their merit. Otherwise, either the investment will go bad for the Chinese investors, or such infrastructure will become, you know, waste of time in the future, because there is no industrialization to go along with it. So wouldn't a kind of more rational, more criticism be a good thing, Mr. Shirazi, when you talk about the long-term stability and certainty of the Pakistani government?
In fact, as I earlier said, that because the agreement between the two countries is very much secret, it is not open to everyone. So it casts doubts on this project. In fact, if we will go to open the agreement and brief the media and the general masses about the, in fact, a whole picture of CPEC, then I think you can counter the criticism which is going on against this project. Yes, we are very much aware that there are 3 phases of CPEC. In the first phase, in fact, there is a road infrastructure development, but in the second and third phase, there is a much internalization on the route of CPECs. So the fear in Pakistan is that this is only a trade route which China can only use for its favor, but there is nothing for Pakistan. But we hope and we are very much confident that in the longer picture into the 2030, we can see a good kind of internalization on the way of the CPEC, and there must be some kind of job creation and again the revival of Pakistan local industry.
Okay.
So these are the factors which create some sort of criticism against the CPEC in Pakistan.
Mr. Qinduo, having heard almost first-hand testimonies of our guests from India and from Pakistan, these must not be strange to you, right? We've had this kind of discussion again and again on our media. What do you think is the difficulty the Chinese government is faced with in talking to the world about this initiative? Why there has been so much controversy and difficulty, I would even say, to make people understand China's true intention, and so that this project can really bring not just infrastructure, not just roads and highways, but also really deeper connectivity and communication among peoples of this world?
Good question. You know, if you look at some of the Western media, even today, people are still asking the same question, like, what is BRI? What is the Belt and Road Initiative? I mean, this is, in a sense, it is a giant plan, basically, connecting the Eurasian, the continent, Africa, Europe, Central Asia, Asia, even Latin America, Africa. So it is a very big plan, and people, first of all, people tend to see it from geopolitical consideration, from the lens of geopolitics, and then that will complicate the situation, right? It's really about a zero-sum plan, a zero-sum game. You gain, I lose. So people have suspicions. Actually, it is, as I said, pure economic and trade cooperation. It's about the connectivity. It's about the building roads, bridges, ports, airports, things like that. China, from its own experience of developing infrastructure, China benefits greatly from its strong infrastructure, from the process of building infrastructure. So China would like to apply, and including Chinese companies, would apply such experience to countries they invest in. But not every time it's well understood, it's well accepted. And also, countries are different. There are different conditions. So at the second layer, you do have individual cases sometimes. Although isolated, it creates a lot of criticism, like what the Chinese are doing, what the Chinese particular company is doing. And thirdly, I think for some Chinese companies, they say, I follow the rule, I follow the law, and also I pay close attention to environmental protection. But still, they are not catching up with the up-to-date concern of this so-called like a corporate social responsibility. For example, if you are investing in Myanmar or African countries, people would ask you questions like, what about the sexual equality in your employment process? Things like that. They are not really, I don't think they are up to date in terms of, they sometimes see like CSR as doing good things to the local community. Sometimes they think as long as I have a good relationship with the local government, that will be fine. No, that will not be enough. You have to communicate with the local community. You have to communicate with the NGO, right, and to hear people and to see how can you do better.
Basically, it is the first time in recent history that the Chinese people reach out to different parts of the world under an economic and trade platform, right, and try to communicate, try to bring their experiences, share their experiences of opening up and reform, and inevitably, I think that their experiences or their behavior were going to create some kind of friction or even clash with the people with the behavior of people in different parts of the world. Mr. Shaikh, how do you look at the kind of difficulties at least this initiative has encountered in the narrative in India, having been in China for 5 months and having acquired a greater understanding of the Chinese society, of the Chinese mind? Do you think China is being misunderstood to a certain degree, and where do you think China could communicate itself slightly better maybe?
Yes, I mean, India-China relationship carries like a historical baggage. We have fought a war, so it's not like people look at China very positively back home. But particularly pertaining to BRI, there are two aspects. One is, India's biggest concern has always been about CPEC. I mean, with Pakistan being an important partner in CPEC, and India kind of feels that it kind of tends to, that entire corridor violates its sovereignty, and China is not a neutral party in this particular aspect. So one particular aspect would probably be if China could kind of go back to its pre-1960 policy where it maintains a degree of neutrality in Kashmir, that would be of great help. The second aspect is the economic aspect. India has a surplus. I mean, we have a trading surplus. China has a trading surplus of close to $52 billion with India. I mean, that's 40% of our trade surplus. And we think that in case if this kind of corridor kind of works, the fear of being swamped by Chinese goods. And the third aspect is a lot of Indian leadership feels that China did not take all the parties on board and held discussions and explained the project properly to them. That's why there is so much of antipathy against this particular project. But I'm hopeful. I mean, for the last 2-3 months, there have been some positive responses that have been coming from India. India last week made a request, an announcement was made which kind of said that Chinese companies were welcome to invest in projects which would help link our northeast states with the Chittagong port in Bangladesh. So there is a certain degree of positivity that is coming in, but India's primary concern is there is not much of transparency in how BRI is being planned, and if that is taken care of, I think a lot of problems will then get solved pertaining to this project.
Okay, you have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin, on this special edition of Belt and Road Initiative. We're going to take a very short break and we'll be back right after that. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, focusing on the Belt and Road Initiative 5 years on. Let me go to my guest, Qinduo, who's a senior journalist with China Radio International. I've come across with some interesting statistics. For instance, it's found that over the past 5 years, the average people in the world has been having ever increasing interest into the Belt and Road topics on the social media platform of Twitter. Statistics show that the rate of average people's participation into the topics related to the initiative have witnessed a year-on-year increase. The rate increased from 21% in 2015 to 35% in 2016 to 64% in 2017. Indeed, almost a doubling for the past 1 year. So, Mr. Xu, what is behind the average people's increasing interest in China's Belt and Road Initiative? Why are they talking so much more about it? And what do they want to know about it, in your eyes?
Well, I think partly because more and more countries, regions and organizations are getting involved or signing up to the BRI, the initiative of there. So you do see like 7 to 8 countries, plus, I would say, international organizations are interacting closely with the Chinese side, either from investment or the building of infrastructure, or the conferences or the meetings. And then on another, say, individual or people level, you do see there are scholarships or forums be hosted by China or other countries. You have more and more participants from countries along Belt and Road Initiative. countries, I would say. So people get sometimes from their own country's participation, sometimes from their personal participation in BRI-related activities. You do see there's increased attention and growing attention to BRI for maybe for good or for bad, right?
Let me go to my guest, Shirazi, in Islamabad. Mr. Shirazi, what kind of public interest there is and public understanding there is of the Belt and Road Initiative, and how much is that playing on the decision-making of the government in terms of how it deals with this project, with China in general, especially when we have Mr. Khan, who has just been elected Prime Minister of Pakistan. How is that going to change or not in the future?
In fact, if you talk about the present government, I mean, they are taking all kind of initiatives which are based on public interest. So we hope that in coming 5 years, what kind of decisions they are taking about the CPEC or CPEC-related projects, that will be based on public interest. And when you talk about the general masses, general public, yes, they are very much positive about the CPEC, and they are hoping that this project will bring some jobs, some sort of economic activity, some sort of industrialization. You know that China investing $37 billion in energy sector, so Pakistan is facing acute shortage of energy. So I mean, the people who belongs to agriculture sector, industrial sector and other sectors, those who are suffering from the shortage of electricity, I mean, they are very much hopeful that this project will bring some good for them. And if we manage to, in fact, solve our energy crisis through this investment, I mean, this will lead to industrial revival in the country. So, I mean, general masses are very much positive. They hope that this project will bring some jobs and economic activity. And again, as I said, that government is very much focused. If the pace of these projects in the past 5 years was not at that rate which it should be, but now the government, you said, you know that the first victory speech from Mr. Imran Khan, which was very much focused on CPEC, and they have also said that they will learn from the Chinese experience how to revive our economy. I mean, they will send the team to Beijing and other parts of China, and they will, learn some good things from China. So, I mean, the present government is very much positive, and we hope that the present regime initiative will expedite the pace of CPEC, which was very much not on target in the past 5 years.
Mr. Shaikh, as an Indian journalist, how much interest do you think there is among the Indian public towards China, towards understanding China, finding out about China, towards coming to China to study or do business with China? How much interest there is among your people, and what kind of role do you think your media, the Indian media in general, is playing? Are they inviting more people to come to know this country, or are they, because with their suspicious tone on the Belt and Road and maybe on China-related topics in general, that they are, you know, not really encouraging the Indian public to find out more about this neighbor right next to them?
No, in spite of our historic baggage, there is massive, tremendous interest for knowing China. You know, if you tell back home that you're someone that you're planning to visit China, people would be really excited. But the only problem is that there has been such a huge wall between us, in a sense, in being able to understand each other's cultures. You mean the Himalayas? Yeah, the Himalayas as well, and an artificial wall that has been created over the past 40-50 years. I mean, people kind of, once they come to China, I mean, the perception that they have back home and once they come and visit is completely different. So I think media has kind of failed in its role to kind of, you know, present a true picture, and in that aspect I would kind of blame even the Chinese media as well as the Indian media for not being able to play a very proactive role in helping strengthen people-to-people relationships and make them understand each other's countries better. But as I said, I mean, things are only looking better with each passing day. I mean, there is like India's soft power in a sense can be so easily witnessed with your Hindi movies, yoga, and the kind of
I practice yoga every day.
And the kind of love that people have, people here in China have for like Amir Khan. So I mean, those stories are now reaching back home, and people are really interested in China, and I hope things will improve drastically in the coming few days.
I think one of the things that gets overlooked is even for the Chinese domestic media or Chinese international media like we are, is that the Belt and Road Initiative is not just about business. It's not just about building railway. It's not just about doing business with China or having Chinese investment in industrial parks. It's really about exchanges between civilizations, between people, so that you have greater understanding of the people, so that you can break down that wall that Mr. Shaikh you just talked about. And I think that is really the long-term value of this initiative, and yet at this moment people seem to be focusing just on the short-term economic or maybe geopolitical replications. Mr. Qinduo, do you agree with me in that maybe we should focus a bit more on the human touch, on the people's stories, on the real-life impact that the initiative is having in the hearts and minds of people along this route?
Well, that's true. You know, despite all the, let's say, some pitfalls, sometimes even failures in terms of investment because of a lack of understanding, obviously there's a learning curve. But if you look at the long term, I strongly believe that you know, people-to-people exchange, you do see a growing level of people-to-people exchange between China and other countries, and also among other countries along this Belt and Road Initiative. You do see more and more students from African countries, from India, from Pakistan. They are now in the Chinese universities. And at the same time, you do see like increasing number of Indian movies now being played in the Chinese cinema. So a lot of young people have this early impression about India, the splendid culture. And also you have people now going out from the Chinese side to Africa, to India. Now India is being listed as the top 10 destination for the Chinese tourists. And also Africa has passed like Hong Kong, Japan, to be the top, actually, adventure-seeking Chinese tourists. So you do see with this increasing exchange of people to people, you would see better understanding of each other, obviously among different civilizations. That will contribute to peace and stability of the whole world.
Indeed, and that will be a great thing to see in maybe not in the near future, but in the distant future, I hope. And many thanks to my three guests, Iftikhar, Shirazi, Bureau Chief of Dawn TV, joining us from Islamabad, Pakistan. In Beijing, Zeeshan, Shaikh, correspondent for the Indian Express, and Qinduo, senior journalist with China Radio International. And that is it for this special edition of The Point on the Belt and Road Initiative. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.